Hey friends, it's Michael, licensed physio with Total Physical Therapy. Today I'm talking about AI and its relevance to physical therapy. It's all the talk, it's all the buzz anywhere you look as of the recording of this video, and that is this idea of the ballooning, blossoming concept of artificial intelligence. Years back I read a book called The Big Nine. It's a very interesting book on the evolution of artificial intelligence. I encourage you to read it. It's got some very forward, futuristic thinking things. And one of those things that it spoke about in the book was how it was already intervening in the healthcare realm and what the future potentially held for many possibilities of what it could do. And it's nothing new to physical therapy. It's actually been utilized in therapy, and there's actually a lot of buzz and I guess fear in the therapy realm that it could ultimately replace people like yours truly. I think COVID proved otherwise. I think it really reminded us of what that concept and what that idea of personal interaction looks and feels like. I know during that time we made an aggressive attempt to offer tele-rehabilitation services, which we still offer, and initially they were really big, they were really sought after, people really enjoyed that element, but at the end of the day people just naturally gravitated away from that because they still wanted that person-to-person, touch-to-touch experience that comes with the element of coming into a clinic for physical therapy. But having said that, there are lots of companies that have gone out and utilized artificial intelligence to really build out exercise regimens and rehabilitative protocols off of this concept of artificial intelligence. And I've looked at a lot of these, and a lot of them have some promise. They can be utilized for good things currently and as well as moving forward, but it is so far removed from replacing the element of that person-to-person interaction. But for this video, I thought we would have a little fun. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually utilize one of the AI programs, and we're going to see how that might be able to help us with our lower back pain. So here we go. Let's give it a try. So as you can see here in this chat with this bot, I've simply asked it, what exercises can I perform to help my lower back pain? Now, usually when you ask questions like this, the bots come back and they tell you that it's necessary in most cases for you to consult with your doctor, physical therapist, if you've had some ongoing persistent pain. And I would have to agree with that. If you've had something that's been ongoing for more than just a handful of days and it's unrelenting, or you can't find techniques or interventions to help alleviate your pain, then it's probably best suited for you to get a set of eyes and ears on that. And in some cases, it might be more than one set of eyes or ears. So that's the disclaimer that the bot always, or generally always, throws out when you ask it questions like this. But let's get into the actual exercises. Okay, number one here, we've got pelvic tilts. Now, pelvic tilts are a very low risk activity. You can have essentially any back condition try to perform this activity. Again, like I said, there's very low risks, and so, you know, it's a pretty safe activity, and it's probably one of the reasons why the bot suggested to say that. It's also one of the most commonly prescribed things to do for lower back pain, and while I don't disagree that it's something that we can try, in the majority of cases I think it's overutilized. And so the idea and the concept of a pelvic tilt is merely to try to get some isolated motion down in that lower part of your spine and its interaction with your pelvis. So I'll give it a check there, albeit I would say that pelvic tilts are generally something that should be integrated as maybe a short warm-up over a 30 to 60 second window, and then kind of kick to the curb and be more productive and more functional. Well, let's move on to exercise number two. It shows a cat and cow stretch. Again, this one would be something that is low risk, and it's something that I find could be very useful, very valuable for a lot of people with spinal afflictions. However, with that being said, a cat-cow stretch generally is going to emphasize movement in what is referred to as your thoracic spine, or the middle part of your spine. This would be basically from your shoulders down to the upper part of your lower back. And in cases where we have individuals perform the cat-cow stretch, we want to try to teach and educate individuals how to move throughout the entire thoracolumbar spine, which would include the lower spine. But if you didn't have this set of eyes, and in many cases a tactile sense, meaning your therapist put their hands on your spine to help kind of give you reinforcement to what you should feel, this might just simply be a miss for the bot. The bot gave you a valuable exercise, but it didn't really have the ability to cue you or to be able to tell you what you were doing effectively, and conversely what you're doing ineffectively. So we'll give the bot a plus minus on that, okay? Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 it has listed here is the hamstring stretch. Oh, the infamous hamstring stretches. Admittedly, yours truly, when I first came out of school, I'll raise my hand, I was one of those that was guilty. For 90% of my back patients, I was giving hamstring stretches. Why did I do that? Well, it's because all the generations previously regurgitated this notion that we need to do a hamstring stretch for low back pain, and when we give our 2 cents about how it impacts the way the pelvis and the spine interact. And while this is true, it can influence it. In reality, we actually find that the majority of people don't need hamstring stretching. In most cases, we find that individuals have a temporary loss of hamstring flexibility because the brain is subconsciously trying to help protect the spine. So we're oftentimes trying to get the hamstring to move more effectively, not be stretched more consistently. I'll also point out here that this bot suggested that a 15 to 30 second stretch here would be where it would recommend starting. I would argue that if you truly needed your hamstring stretches, that's not an appropriate length of time. It should actually be much longer than that to elicit a favorable and sustained change. Because most of the time when we offer a stretch in this duration, you do get a short-term release that is oftentimes mitigated within just a few minutes. So there's much more favorable techniques to actually try to improve that mobility in your hamstrings, and it's something that many therapists won't hang their hat on providing these stretches anymore. So in this case, I'd actually have to give the bot a minus, because it's just like we did in decades past. It's just referring to age-old techniques. All right, let's go on to number 4, a knee to chest stretch. Again, this is a very low impact, very low risk activity. I would say probably 90 to 95% of individuals that do this actually have relief or no change at all. In rare, say 5% of the cases, do we actually have more pain with this. So I'll give the bot a plus on this, just because it's probably gonna help. It would not be something that I would consistently do for a very long period of time, just because there's so many other more valuable options. Now, the last thing that it provides on here is a McKenzie extension exercise, and for sake of the length of this video, we're just going to state that McKenzie approaches are oftentimes trying to put your spine into a backwards bending position to help ease pain and tension. But sometimes people just have a lot of pain with this, and so if this was a case where an individual didn't have the ability to sustain or even perform 1 rep of this, there's so many techniques to help facilitate or encourage this movement, but your bot's going to miss the boat on this. So I'd also have to give it a minus on this case too, just because more people do tend to have pain if they haven't been instructed appropriately for this. Okay, so there's a little disclaimer at the end that basically says to start slowly and only perform exercises that do not increase your pain. Well, pain is a very, very finicky thing. There are so many elements at play when it comes to pain, and if we are hanging our hat on this idea that we don't elicit pain or increase pain, then we're missing the bigger picture of the whole idea and concept and the psychology and the physiology of pain. So I see this statement all the time, and it's something that's very, very common on things that you read online, or obviously in this case of what a bot's going to tell you, and it's just kind of a CYA statement. But in a case where you're actually consulting with and intervening with a physio, they're going to be able to help you, walk you through the path of what your symptoms actually mean. In some cases, yeah, that pain might be something that we're trying to avoid, but in a lot of cases, we can facilitate the reduction, if not the elimination of pain, when we actually address what might be encouraging that. And sometimes it's not a mechanical issue. Sometimes it's just merely some things that have been going on throughout the day, or maybe you had an incredibly pro-inflammatory series of meals that day, meals high in saturated fat. These are all examples of what might change your perception of pain. So while I understand the statement's there for a reason, with bots and things that you read online, really to truly effectively manage and work through symptoms that are created by exercise, you're really most at benefit by consulting with a trained individual. Okay, so those are the exercises that are provided, but Sadly, most people are going to stop here. They're going to do this, and there hasn't been any guidance or any instruction on how frequently you should do any of this. All of these exercises were kind of blanketly stated at doing it 10 times or holding that kind of standard 15 to 30 second interval. So most of you watching this would have taken a stab at maybe doing it a couple times a week, or maybe you overachievers would have done it every single day. And if it was beneficial, then you might have had a tendency to continue to regurgitate it, do the same things over and over until symptoms started to magnify again. And that's the whole idea and concept behind exercise, is that there's a scientific prescription to it, and it actually needs to be changed and adapted according to what your body is telling you. A task that's no easy task for the common person, but it's something that a skilled individual like a physio is trained to handle day in and day out, patient after patient after patient. But let's give the bot an opportunity. Let's see what AI tells us if we simply ask it to give us a 4-week lower back exercise progression. Now, interestingly enough, this bot is actually going to take from that sample of those 5 exercises that it gave us, and it's going to simply regurgitate those exercises in this 4-week layout. So let's take a look at this. So it's given us a little bit more definition with our prescription. It's telling us to do 3 sets of 10 of some of these exercises and these stretches. It's telling us to do 2 sets of, again, 15 to 30 second holds. Between week 1 and week 2, there was really no change other than the fact that it added 1 exercise. And I would argue that that knee to chest, as I said earlier, is very low risk, and it helps 90+% of people. So why would we wait till week 2 to implement that? It should have been a strategy kicked in all the way at the very beginning, in my opinion. And I would think that most physios would agree. That would be kind of a go-to activity. And we do it. We ask you how you feel. 90+% of the time people say it feels good. It helps my symptoms. And then we would say, repeat that. So I think that AI missed the boat on this, and so it's kind of put you through 2 weeks here of doing something that, again, it's very low risk, but is it meeting that minimum therapeutic threshold? Who's to say? A percent of you, yeah, this would meet the threshold, but I think there's going to be a large chunk of you where this really is underperforming what you want it to do. But let's move on. Let's move to week 3. Week 3, we see more of the same. We see a little bit of change in volume. Instead of those sets of 10, it's trying to implement in sets of 15. It's also trying to extend out the stretches longer to a 30-second hold. And we've added in that other exercise of a McKenzie extension. So I'll give it a plus minus. At least it tried to change the volume for you. As I mentioned earlier, exercise needs to be changed. It needs to be adapted according to your signs and symptoms and your tolerance of these activities. But we have now gone 3 weeks, call it 21 days. Maybe you are in the workforce, and maybe you are in an acute bout of exercise that prevented you from satisfying your work activities, and there's no light work for you at your job. So they told you, they kind of kicked you to the curb and said, you're going to have to come back with clearance before you can work. So 3 weeks have gone by at this point, and there has been, arguably, in my opinion here, there's been no functional progression to help restore any type of movement that would be necessary for the majority of job demands. Everything that's been done here has been either lying on your back or on your hands or knees. But here you are, 3 weeks into this, and maybe you have some relief. Maybe your pain intensity is improved or the frequency is better. But the second you do try to do something active, maybe you don't have tolerance of that yet. So let's move into week 4, see what kind of tolerance we're going to build. Sadly, unfortunately, we are now into week 4. It's a regurgitation of the exact same exercises. We've changed the volume a little bit again by upping some of these reps. But again, there's nothing in this layout that is function driven, meaning you are going to get up off of your back, you're going to put weight through your spine, you're going to move that spine, the hips, the knees, the ankles, the shoulders, and everything else. You're going to put it through the daily rigors, and even more specifically through your occupational demands. And yet this 4-week plan just failed you. It didn't do any of that. So I would argue that a large percentage of individuals would have never in 1 month's time returned to a pre-morbid status. So you are throwing your darts blinded at the dartboard, hoping that you can hit that thing and actually satisfy the needs that you need to carry out at work or through the majority of your or through the majority of your daily tasks. So while AI has some promise, it definitely influences some of the things that are already being done and driven in physical therapy. it still has significant limitations. It doesn't have that interactive component with you being able to take in and account for more than just a report of pain. To take in considerations like your other health conditions or your socioeconomic status, your work status, your work demands, your work volume. So many factors go into play here that this AI is just simply not able to draw all this information and make a extrapolation on an exercise program considering all of those things. So if you had fun with this like I did, just go ahead and smash that like button down below. If you have played with some online programs, I know there's tons out there that can build exercise regimens, they can build running regimens or strength training progressions, structured throwers, baseball programs, the list goes on and on. If you've done some of those, share that down below. I've tried handfuls through the years, and with my background, being able to take good things and bad things out of them and just kind of see where we're at, where we're moving, and kind of refine these things and make them better. But at the end of the day, I trust that you will seek the appropriate attention from appropriately trained individuals and not hang your hat on just utilizing online-based AI programs for this. But again, like I said, as I think COVID taught us, removing that human interaction oftentimes is more trouble than what it's worth. If you guys agree, share your comments down below. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, appreciate you doing that. As always, have a beautiful day, and we'll talk to you guys soon.